All right. Hey, folks. Welcome to Demo Day. This is Jake and Cody from Firstloop back again on the pod, where it is our job to bring you to the cutting edge, the tips, techniques, tricks, experiments, everything that we are working on at the cutting edge of AI-powered software development. My name is Jake, and I'm joined by Cody, co-founder and CTO of Firstloop. And today we are going to be looking at the LLM home project that I have been working on. I'll be driving our demo today. And this is really a project to replace my Google Home. You can kind of see the layout here. It has the product here has access to my Nest. It has access to Spotify and kind of my G Suite accounts. And really this project got started out of my desire to replace my Google Home because it just feels like it's a year behind where LLMs are today and what we should be able to do with it. So the whole architecture of this product is using the latest LLM tools and toolings like MCP servers, which we can walk through in a little bit. I'll do a quick demo and then we can jump into some of the technical architecture here. We're going to demo in two parts. The project is built to be driven by Claude Home from the beginning, so we could jump into the command line and show you that. I'll do that second. I'm going to start by doing a demo using a real-time voice-to-voice model from OpenAI just to show you how the controls work. So here in the voice, I can talk to it as if it were, something like a Google Home. Can you change my current song on Spotify to be a Tame Impala song? Just pick a top track. All right, so you won't be able to hear the music, but if we flip back, we should now see that the now playing has updated to be the current song. And there's a whole bunch of tools that we can work with. There's like a little to-do set of tools in here. That's a little less Google Home-like, but it's got control of the Spotify. We can have it control the thermostat as well. We'll do that, and then a Google Calendar demo. Then we'll flip into kind of discussing it and jumping into some more of the Claude Code version of controlling this. Hey, can you look at my work calendar for next week, the Firstloop calendar, and tell me what's on the agenda? Can you use the Control Center MCP to get that integration ID? Super excited for the dentist cleaning. All right, great. Now, can you tell me what temperature it is in my apartment right now? Sweet. Could you turn the AC on and set it to 65 degrees? And I don't know if you can hear the AC kick on or if the AirPods are...
I did hear that.
Nice. Yeah, so get the little thermostat update here too.
Cool.
The next demo, I'll turn the AC off because it'll get too cold for me in a second. So I'd say that's kind of the overarching version of the product. Like that's how this is going to work in the end state, which is that voice-to-voice model having access to a whole bunch of tools that can control all the different utilities that you'd expect out of something like a Google Home.
Could you say a little bit about, what was your experience with Google Home or Siri or Alexa kind of prior to building this? I know you said a lot of them just feel behind in terms of adopting LLMs. How does this experience differ from a user perspective, would you say? Because, it's been a while. I've used Siri. Siri is possibly among the worst of the voice control tools out there, just in terms of what it can actually do. And seems like 99% of the time it just wants to search the internet for whatever I happen to be asking it about. But I'm kind of curious, what's your experience with Google Home? What observable differences can you see right now, even though you're just trying to capture kind of what a Google Home should be?
Yeah. I definitely think Siri is quite a bit further behind than something like Google Home, and it'd be fun to grab a Pixel at some point and see how the AI assistant in the phones natively works. I think the biggest difference right now is kind of just a speed and capabilities thing and a hackability. So right now, what we have like showing on the screen is pretty similar to how I use my Google Home on a day-to-day basis, like control music, play music on speakers, basic questions about the weather or what time it is, and then control my the Google Nest or Nest as well, the thermostat. And that's probably at about parity. Like Google Home operates just fine on that. It's maybe a little bit slower than it could be otherwise. But what I'm really excited about is the next layer of this, which is the architecture is built to be composable, and all of the tools that the assistant here has access to are MCP servers. And so the next layer would be connecting in like my linear MCP server. And then I could ask it and say, hey, what do I have on the docket for, my to-dos for Firstloop right now? and I could get my whole set of development tasks that I need to be working on. And then from there, I could say, all right, great. Now that you have those, could you add them to my calendar in 2 hour blocks such that I have dedicated heads down time for each of those tasks? So I think right now, the Google Home and this like are probably about equal. And this is really good for administrative tasks already. But I think the level of intelligence that we could have in these tools, that's where Google Home is lacking. And that's what I'm excited to do. So maybe we have
Right.
to do a part 2 of this a little bit further down the road with those additional capabilities baked in.
Yeah, I love the, plug and play nature of MCP and the fact that you can just bring them all over the place. The fact that just any MCP server in theory should just plug into this. Do you know much about like what is the extension environment or store or whatever it is for Google Home? Do they allow developers to just write their own kind of custom stuff? What does that even look like? I'm sure it's all proprietary, right?
Yeah, I have no idea. I would assume it's proprietary. I did not see. I did have ChatGPT do a deep research at one point on can you like tear apart a Google Home and like use it for parts or hack it at all? And it was pretty, at least on the hardware side, they said it was very locked down. I don't know about on the software side,
Okay.
but my guess is that it's not supported.
Yeah. In any case, I mean, you would, assuming you could just write custom tools for the Google Home, I'm sure it's not going to be anything that follows a standard like MCP, which is, reusable across pretty much any LLM application at this point. I don't know if you saw ChatGPT
Oh yeah.
just dropped support for MCP as well, and I haven't had a chance to really splunk to know how that fully works yet, but it's pretty cool to see that, you just get all of these. It just feels like such a nice way
Yeah.
to plug things in across all these different systems and kind of get the same experience or capabilities. I'm sure it all can depend on the model that you're actually using to make the tool calls, but yeah, very cool standard.
Yeah. When talking about ChatGPT, I'm pretty interested then. I don't know if they're going to continue supporting it or not, but they had those scheduled tasks. And if you could plug in a custom MCP server, I could make a custom thermostat schedule off of that. I mean, I probably could anyways using like GitHub Actions or something, which would be a little bit silly. But like if we could deploy the MCP server here, either package into GitHub Action or remotely for ChatGPT to interact with, that'd actually be really fun. I think I have to do that
Yeah,
after this at some point.
you could get some interesting integrations there going there of like I don't know, gamifying the thermostat, because I'm sure you could just set a schedule on the Nest, but
Yeah.
maybe you have, all right, ChatGPT, go look, and if I didn't run 1,000 lines of code or write a thousand lines of code yesterday and commit them to GitHub, then I lose AC privileges for today, and it just shuts it off on you.
That would be funny. Yeah, I was thinking more about, turning the temperature up on it in the morning and turning it down at night, but having a motivation like that baked in could be nice too. The other thing that I want to show is, so this is the UI version, but originally this project started out of using Claude Code only. I layered in voice later, but I'm going to switch my screen here in a second and show you the Claude Code version. What we have here is we're just in the directory for this project. We can look at the MCP servers and we can see the control center, G Suite, Spotify, thermostat, and then this to do. Yeah, I don't know if having this control center is a necessary architecture decision in the long run. I wanted to have a way to expose the different integrations and what integrations you have set up, because like the G Suite MCP server can receive like my calendar ID and then go pull events for a given calendar. But multiple Google accounts, I wanted like a way to add all of them and then have the server just work with one at a time. So the control center manages the integrations you have built in, and then G Suite handles email, calendar, Spotify, thermostat, do what you think. And then to do is just kind of a to do app. But with this built in, then I can say, turn my AC off. And now this will use that same MCP server. And if you haven't been able to hear, hopefully not in the recording, but my AC did just shut off. We can actually open up the UI and this will now show it as off as well. So this is how it started, was as a way to give additional kind of administrative capabilities to Claude. And I want to show one more layer of demo to this, which we're not going to be able to fully capture because it turns out that Riverside doesn't capture computer audio this way. But if I do bun run listen, the iconic part about the Google Home is you can say, hey, Google, and then it'll spin up and then you'll be able to say something to it. And eventually I would like to get to that point. And this is the first attempt at a wake word listener where you can give instructions to Claude and then it will run using the Claude Code SDK. So I'll do a quick demo of that. We won't be able to hear Claude talk back to us though. Hey Claude, could you tell me about my to-dos? So what we just saw there was the actual like, hey Claude, woke it up, and then oh now it's going again, um, and then and then it wrapped up. And if you could hear my audio, you would actually see Claude talking to me right now. So on the right hand side here, what we have going on is the Claude Code SDK is now running using those MCP servers to respond to my ask. So I'll check my to-dos. It actually talked to me here using a text to speech MCP server. And then we have the to-do list where it got more information. And then now it is continuing to talk in my ear, telling me about what my to-dos are. So that's where the project was born, actually, was I wanted to give Claude Code a way to access all of these administrative capabilities and then use a text-to-speech MCP server, not demoed here, so that way it could provide audio responses as well.
Very cool. So, when we think of a Google Home, we kind of think of a little standalone device that is sitting somewhere, maybe on your countertop or next to your entertainment system. I know you've mentioned a little bit about potentially offloading this whole experience to a Raspberry Pi, which, is probably really nice because that can just be a dedicated device for this whole scenario and it can just live over on its own little in its own little space, and you don't have to worry about fiddling with applications and stuff on your own computer. Is that something you're still considering? What are the challenges that you're kind of looking at there? I know, running some of these local models, for example, like
Yep.
WakeWord, might be challenging given the hardware there. But could you say more about that?
Yeah, I think that'll be the big part, and if that's solvable, then it'd be smooth sailing from there. So this wake word program is just a little script that runs a whisper model locally. It's like a whisper.cpp. So GGML and the guy behind this is doing all sorts of really cool AI stuff and making these models really easy to run. And so whisper.cpp is a OpenAI's whisper model running just locally, and this is definitely the most inefficient way to do a wake word. It's literally just transcribing all of the audio all of the time, and then throwing away what it doesn't need. If it catches the "Hey Claude" sequence or some other similar ones, then it'll wake up and start actively listening and recording that audio process. And then when there's no more audio, then it'll send that whole file to Grok to get transcribed. So if this model could run on a Raspberry Pi, then the whole thing would be workable, and it's like a pretty easy to run. I would imagine run a Bun server on Raspberry Pi just because Bun's so portable and that serves everything else. So this is kind of the linchpin, and then from there it'd be pretty easy to do.
Interesting. Do you know if anyone's successfully run this on a Raspberry Pi? I bet there's some Medium article or something out there about.
Yeah, I haven't Googled, but I bet there is. Someone's doing it. My thought is I have like an old Mac sitting around too, so that'd probably be my next step
Mm,
is, can I package this up in a way that I could then move it onto another computer and have it run in like a nice, easy package there? And if that works, then look at if my old MacBook can handle it, then maybe a Raspberry Pi could handle it. If not, just have the MacBook set up running in a corner somewhere, and then connect some additional microphones to it and let that work.
yeah, I bet you could just do some research on like the GPUs that the Raspberry Pis have built in, and maybe there's just benchmarks already against some of that hardware just to get an idea. But I also like the idea of just reusing the any old hardware you've got laying around. But those Raspberry Pis are pretty sweet. I mean, they're about the
Yeah,
size of a deck of cards, so you could really, hide that in an obscure location and just wire a microphone or something from it and keep it really tucked out of the way. But
yeah.
in any case, very cool stuff there.
Yeah, I think the Raspberry Pi would be neat if there is like more efficient. There's like Open WakeWord, which is another library that I looked at for a while, and you can train a model on a like specific sequence of wake words. But honestly, I was just struggling to get it to work correctly, and it's a little bit outside of my domain expertise. And so I
I
just went with
see.
like the heavy handed of like, let's just transcribe everything instead of trying to do something that's like purpose built for listening to a wake
Yeah.
word. So this would probably be a little bit more hardware efficient way to do it, but it definitely was not easy for me to get started with it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole, it's probably inefficient to just do transcriptions all the time. But if you're running a local model and you have a dedicated computer for it, I mean, I highly doubt it even uses that much of your CPU or GPU anyway when it's just running locally, especially if you're sitting in just a silent office or apartment most of the time while you're working.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting stuff there. I definitely wouldn't want to be transcribing with like the open AI models
Oh, yeah.
consistently. Just
Yeah.
really rack up some costs there. But
Yep.
do you, this is kind of maybe getting a little bit off topic, but do you know how this specific tool actually works compared to just doing the constant transcriptions?
Like the open wake word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea.
I wonder if it
I
maybe it's just looking for specific, audio waveforms or something like that. I could see maybe it being a bit more statistical, I guess, on the actual representation of what the audio looks like in data rather
yeah.
than translating it to, text and going that direction. But this looks pretty serious and technical
Yeah,
looking at
I
the
think
GitHub
you're probably
page.
right. Is that it probably just works at like a slightly different data layer. Like it's probably not looking at the words themselves. And I think that's why you would need to train like a new model to customize the wake word. It has like a couple built in, like I think it has like Hey Computer, Hey Jarvis and stuff built in, but I wanted to be able to say Hey Claude. And for that, I had to either train a new model, which I took a couple cracks at, and they have like a Google Colab available for it. There was some issues in the Colab notebook, and you have to like create some synthetic data first, and then you use that to train the model because apparently you want to have it, have data as if you were in different environments. That way it has like more consistency on, if someone else is talking and then you say, Hey, Claude, like, does it still pick that up correctly? So, yeah, this would definitely be like the next layer. I think it's probably more efficient, probably more robust. But at the same time, I was amazed that you can just use a model, and because we can have these models run locally, like, yeah, let's just have a bigger model run locally the entire time, transcribe everything, and it's
Right.
just easier to reason about.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense. Speaking of models, kind of looking at more of the operational side of things for once the home tool is actually up and running. You said you've got the real-time model running from this UI perspective. You can also run it from Claude Code. My hypothesis would be that your experience could vary quite a bit, and just the quality of the conversations could vary quite a bit based just on the model you're using. So have you used Claude Code versus the real-time model, which I assume is a lot more lightweight? Have you noticed any real difference there in terms of the just quality and behaviors?
Yeah, I'm surprised by how good the real-time model is. Claude Code definitely has some serious firepower and it can iterate through tool calls really well. But I think we've crossed a threshold where like the models are just good enough. Like all of these tools currently in this current stage, they are all very straightforward where it's sending a tool call either with no parameters or just a couple parameters like the ID of my calendar or the ID of a song on Spotify that I want it to play. So the complexities, it's simple enough that the real-time models had no issues with it. And I think that's pretty amazing. Both it's just like the models being that good right now is, I guess, surprising.
There's something interesting here of, you're not generating content really, where, I think that's where maybe models
Yep.
become a bit more discernible in how good they are. If you're trying to generate novel writing or really complex code, I'm sure you'll notice a difference between, I don't know, GPT 4.0 mini and the latest Claude models. But if it's strictly just to, call one tool or maybe link two tools together and then summarize the output, we're not looking for anything too crazy here. And another thing
Yeah.
that's kind of neat with the real-time model, I mean, it is so fast that you are able to like interrupt it and you can say, no, I actually meant this. This is what you should do. And it just snaps right back to it. So maybe there's some benefit to that as well. Just the really quick back and forth. It's, a lot more conversational, and you can steer it anyways just by giving it direct feedback rather than, maybe Claude Code takes 10 seconds to generate a reply for you, and then just to do potentially also the wrong thing, and now you've got to correct it, and it's just a slower loop.
Yeah. I think for like this use case, the Google Home use case, that the real time or voice to voice models are just going to win out. Like they're good enough already, and then the speed and the interaction back and forth is what that user experience needs. I'm interested, and this will be like an exploratory path further down this project of, can we use a real time model to control multiple Claude Code instances? So maybe it's not this project at all, but like, can I say, manager or something, can you spin up a couple different Claude Code instances in these different projects and start working on these things? Then as they like are done with tasks, the Claude Code reports their status to like kind of the manager model up top, and then that's the model that I'm interacting with. So kind of like a delegation
Interesting.
pattern.
Yeah, that's cool. And I don't want to talk bad about any managers, but maybe there's something to that as well, where you don't need the really beefy model that's really good at a specific thing to do that delegation either. It just needs to be good enough to identify, we're doing a database related task, so I'm going to call this specific agent that has all the tuning and instructions that are really specific around designing data structures and data storage. And
Yep.
that seems like a pretty easy decision to make when you've got, considering that model, it's got its known quantity of agents, each with their kind of high level job description. So definitely feels interesting there. And I like the potential asynchronicity of that as well, where these agents are kind of just working in the background, and then the manager can raise
Yeah.
issues to you as well as things kind of wrap up.
Yeah. This is getting a little too in the weeds, but I wonder if there's, like you said, async, and it makes me think of like, what's the full loop there? And could we have it where we say a wake word, it opens up a voice to voice model, you can talk with it and kind of figure out the entire details of the task, and then say, all right, done. And it uses a tool call to shut itself off. It sends the task onto a Claude Code that completes it. And then that Claude Code sends its final MCP call is spinning up the voice agent again with the results of the task. So that way you don't have
Yeah.
like the voice model running the entire time in the middle too.
Yeah, I think there are some interesting things with, triggering agents through MCPs. And I've seen people do wonky stuff online of even just adding an MCP for codecs to Claude Code, which
Oh
I don't
yeah.
fully understand that quite yet, but people are playing around with it. I also know, I haven't had a chance to dig in, but there's this A2A protocol that actually is slightly different from MCP, but actually specs out a standard for how agents can talk to each other as
Oh,
well.
that's interesting.
So I don't know how popular that is yet. I'm trying to remember who spun it up, if it's coming from
Yeah.
DeepMind.
That one might be
So
Google. Yeah, I think you're right. Do you mind?
So I think it's got some pretty serious backing at this point. Whether it's actually been realized yet by real products, I don't know. So there could be something to explore there as well. Because the MCP stuff, it feels a little bit like a hack. Obviously, it works to trigger those communications
Yeah.
between agents. And I wouldn't be surprised if I haven't played around with these either yet, but I keep hearing about different projects that people are deploying on GitHub where they've got their whole agent swarm where they define system prompts for all of them. I
Yep.
wouldn't be surprised if that's all kind of orchestrated through MCPs at this point, but could be something to explore for sure, and probably has to be built into some of these model APIs and things first. But hopefully it's coming. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, on that, like I am a little surprised with how robust MCP support has gotten. Like Anthropic put it out, was it a year ago? It's probably been about that long. And I feel like it was a slow burn, and then it hit a lot of hype in the community. And I think the community kind of pushed all the other providers to support it now. And with ChatGPT supporting write actions in ChatGPT with a developer flag toggled. But still, that like tells me that MCP is here to stay now.
Right.
And so far, I'm not seeing the same with the agents to agents, but maybe it just needs a little bit more time to bake. And really, the learning from the MCP experience then is just if enough community rallies around it, then it will probably garner the support. But if the community's not there, then I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, I think there's still an overwhelming number of people that are figuring out how to work directly with a single agent at a time. And so
Yeah, that's true.
cracking open the agent to agent thing isn't, I feel like we're just not there yet. And I'll be honest, like I'm still, I'll work with multiple agents at a time, but I'm still the main, hub of all of
Yeah.
them, and they're kind of doing their own discrete things. So it'd be still difficult for me to wrap my head around, okay, how do you actually make those now talk to each other? And maybe there's opportunities for that I've seen recently of trying to get two coding agents working on tasks, and then they change code in the same area and now they've
Yep.
got merge conflicts. Is there a way to have them be able to talk to each other and say, hey, I'm modifying these files, let me know if you're doing that too? And then they could maybe do some communication behind the scenes just to either say, okay, I'll stop working and wait until you're done, and then, merge your changes in. But yeah, it feels very abstract still. I'm hopeful we'll get there, but I do agree, like MCP it feels like the new HTTP or something in this weird world of LLMs. And I'm really happy that it exists, because otherwise we end up with every LLM provider all of a sudden just become a Zapier or something where they've got all these
Yeah.
proprietary integrations, and it really just it shifts the effort to the actual service owner, such as Linear or Google, to create these tools, and
Yeah.
then it works for everyone. So that's how this stuff should be. It just took something as big as LLMs to inspire that kind of rally, I guess.
Yeah. One last comment on MCP is this all the tools started as MCP servers. The real-time model at the time didn't support MCP directly, but it did support tool calls, and so I was able to make like a little adapter for the voice agent. And then at that point, the tools became available to the voice. Since then, OpenAI has released their latest version of the real-time model, which actually does have MCP support, so that adapter is probably no longer needed. But having the standardized interface of the MCP servers made that really easy. Like it was just a mapping
Mhm.
of that, mapping one definition to the definition of the tool calls, and then all of the tools worked. And that's, I think, an understated benefit of MC. Like it just, once you look at the reusability of it, it just becomes so valuable.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I can't help but think about our time with working on Carrot, where maybe we were building kind of a glorified MCP experience, but it becomes pretty tedious to just wrap APIs and handle all the edge cases, and to do that over and over or rely on some random open source package can be not the greatest experience.
Yeah.
So I just love seeing, like, was the Spotify, is that an official MCP, or is some of these communities still?
These are actually all hand rolled by me. I do think there's some
Oh,
value
okay.
in that, not necessarily personally doing it, but like crafting it with intentionality. But these are all hand rolled in particular because I wanted to get like the permissions right. And because it's
Okay.
simple enough, I wasn't too worried about it.
Yeah.
I do think like the Notion one's a great example of Notion had the community MCP like right away, and that was just wrapping the REST API. And then the Notion team came out with an official MCP server, and it's not just their REST API. It is like a purpose built, very like yeah, I guess purpose built is probably the right word. Set of tools for an agent interacting with Notion, and the tools expose like search and writing capabilities that abstract the complexity that the agent doesn't need to deal with, and like make the tool kind of fit the tool caller.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, cool. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap it up here?
No, this has been a ton of fun. The kind of explorations in MCP are going to continue, and anything that I built for this project will probably end up getting rolled over to another one just because of how portable MCP makes everything. So it's been a lot of fun. We'll
Yeah.
maybe we'll have a part two of this later once it's in a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. Yeah. We've really been on a roll with MCPs. I think the last few episodes which might be all of them, have involved
Yeah.
MCPs to some degree. So, well, cool. Thanks for walking us through your demo, and thanks, folks, for watching. And we'll be back with another episode next week.
All right. See you then.
Bye bye.